Waste time. I'm joined by Ann Murphy of the Massachusetts Women's Political Caucus. She served Republican Governors Cellucci and Weld. Joe Malone is the Republican former state treasurer. Attorney Warren Tolman, as our token Democrat tonight, is a former candidate for governor. None of them are committed to presidential candidates. The scorekeeper said Senator John McCain had a good night last night. He seemed to catch fire when he corrected Mitt Romney for saying the surge in Iraq is apparently succeeding.
Governor, the surge is working. The surge is working, sir. It is working. No, not apparently. It's working. We are succeeding, and the great debate is not whether it's apparently working or not. The great debate is going to take place on the floor of the United States Senate the middle of this month, and it's going to be whether we set a date for withdrawal, which will be a date for surrender, or whether we will let this surge continue and succeed. And I can assure you, it's more than apparent. It is working, and we have to rally the American people. People in New Hampshire.
Ann Murphy, the reports of John McCain's demise premature. A lot of conservative pundits said he had a great night last night.
Well, I agree. I think he was really on the money, and I think you see the John McCain who we got to know in the previous presidential race.
Late for him?
I don't think so, because I don't think anyone really was paying attention in a big way until this debate.
A lot of people say the one thing they were paying attention to is he stood next to Ted Kennedy on the immigration bill, which is anathema amongst Republicans. Can he still come back?
Well, 6 months ago, he was acting as the guy who was really trying not to lose as opposed to win. Now he looks like someone who's going out there being aggressive. He's not afraid to scold Republicans for overspending for the last several years in Congress, doing a lot of things that he did when he ran for president the last time, which won him so much respect. So I do think, given that there's 70% of the electorate up in New Hampshire who still hasn't made up their mind, it's not too late.
You want to make it unanimous?
I do, Jim. And
did you lose a few inches since I saw you?
Yeah, I did. It's something about this chair,
okay,
but that's all right. Maybe it's the haircut. But, you know, a lot of times we hear a candidate give his or her concession speech on election night and say, boy, I wish I had seen that candidate earlier. It's liberating sometimes when you feel like it's all over now, I'm going to just let my own self be revealed.
And you think that's what we saw last night?
No, John McCain's had that moment. Say, look, if I continue down this path I'm going, that's where I'm heading. I'm going to show my own self like I did 8 years ago.
And you think that was what we saw last night?
I think that was more of it, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. The Fox debate also featured viewers who asked questions from a local restaurant. One of them made Mitt Romney wince. Here it is.
I didn't hear how you would end it. I didn't hear an end game plan from you, and I would like a response on that. And also along those same lines, sir, a comment. I don't think you fully understand how offended my wife and I were, and probably the rest of the people who have sons, daughters, husbands, and wives serving in the war on terror, to compare your son's attempts to get you elected to my son's service in Iraq. I know you apologized a couple days later after a firestorm started, but it was wrong, sir, and you never should have said it.
Well, there is no comparison, of course. There's no question but that the honor that we have for men and women who serve in armed forces is a place of honor we will never forget, and nothing compares to it. People are willing to put...
Yeah, the line from a month ago that was being referred to by that guy in the restaurant was, one of the ways my sons are showing support for our nation is to help get me elected because they think I'm a great president. He apologized. Obviously, it was in jest. This was almost a Mike Dukakis moment from a presidential debate, was it not, when talked about what would happen if someone did something horrible to his wife?
I think that's a very tough situation to have Mitt Romney be in, and I think he has apologized for it, but how many times can he keep apologizing? And I think he has to move on from that as well, but look sympathetic to the person because he's a voter. And
but he looked completely unsympathetic. It seemed to me, I mean, the line in magazines like Human Events was, no empathy in this guy at all. It was a cold answer. Do you buy that, Joe Malone?
He made a gaffe, and he paid for it last night, and he'll probably pay for it more in the future.
And he got slam dunked by John McCain in his earlier one, did he not, with the apparently thing? Bad night for Mitt Romney.
It wasn't bad. It was no doubt about it. It was not his best night.
How about it, Warren?
Split screen killed Mitt there. He was sort of smiling as the question was being asked. Number one. Number two, I don't care how many times he apologized. He could have apologized right there to him and to the gentleman and his wife.
You know, also, speaking of and I think it's clear that Romney meant it as a joke when he said it a month ago, in part, and obviously he did apologize for it. John Kerry was driven out of the race for the presidency in 2008, Joe Malone, because of what most people, not all, consider a stupid joke that he made in California. I have to say, I find this comment about military service in the middle of a war where more than 3,000 Americans have died far more offensive than John Kerry's wildly unfunny joke in California, don't you?
Well, part of Kerry's problem was he had a long history of making comments that were negative about American soldiers, and now this final one was just too much for people to take.
But having been a decorated soldier himself, which Mitt Romney is not, nor are his 5 sons.
But he basically called American soldiers baby killers.
But what's the answer to my question? Is Mitt Romney's thing not at least in that
Number
category?
one, I don't think he meant it as a joke. I think he honestly meant that, no, they're not over in Iraq, but you know what? They care about this country, and therefore they're helping to change things. Now, it went over like a lead balloon. It was not something that he should have said, but that's the tone in which he meant it.
You buy it, Ann Murphy?
I agree with Joe, and I think that he really is sincere in his remorse over it, but I think every time it comes up, it's a tough position.
Final thought on this one, Tony?
Kerry, I think by far Mitt's comments were much worse, but the problem, I agree with Joe in his analysis, that was the straw that broke the Kerry's back, that people were looking for a way to push Kerry off the stage and said, see, we can't go there again, we can't trust this guy, we can't risk it. I didn't ascribe to it then, I don't ascribe to it now, but that was what the pundits were saying.
Okay, there's a very tall guy, Joe Malone, with a very deep voice and a southern accent who's very high profile, who entered the race last night on Jay Leno's show. Is the excitement which seems to exist, at least in the polls, for this Fred Thompson guy, is this pro-Fred Thompson, or is this expressing a dissatisfaction with the existing 8?
Part of it is looking for the ideal, and the ideal is the Ronald Reagan reborn.
Is he Ronald Reagan reborn? A lot of people say he is.
You know what? I don't sense yet that there's a Thompson revolution in terms of what his vision for this country is. If he goes out and articulates the way Ronald Reagan did what's wrong with America and how to fix it, then you will see a fire, just a brush fire take off. He hasn't gotten there yet. He may very well, but in terms of having a charisma and having this kind of star power, he's got that.
I wasn't kidding when I said before. Artie Soul reported at the beginning that while the highest rated debate last night, Leno had higher ratings when Thompson was on, and the rerun of Law and Order really had higher ratings than both. Huge night for Thompson, despite people saying too late, too this, too that. No?
Well, I think it was a little bit bizarre to have him. I mean, I know it's a strategy in the campaign to have him announce on Jay Leno. He was going Hollywood and not going to the voters of New Hampshire. If I were them, I'd be a little bit upset that he wasn't there.
But I think he's going to be in 3,000 debates before January. He's going to be in New Hampshire, I think, several days from now. Are they going to say, no, we like you, you speak well, assuming they do, we will never forgive you for announcing on Jay Leno?
I think time is not on his side now because it takes time to do all those meet and greets and one person at a time. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, but don't you get the sense that there is sort of, it's like, well, we like Rudy Giuliani, but we're worried about the social stuff. There does not seem to be a lock-in at all to any of these Republicans. Now, that's a fair statement, is it not?
Yes, I agree.
How about